you can bring it up there, and if we want to shut it off later, we can. It's not a big deal. I think we're okay.
Okay.
I'm going out to the YouTube page right now so I can see what we're doing and then share it out with the world. Let's see which Twitter I'm logged into right now. There's one, and we'll get the other one out here, get some people coming in. Hopefully. Honestly, a lot of our traffic comes from the people who come after the show. So it's good that YouTube saves it all out there. And there is the Critical Blast tweet to the world that we are in here doing our thing. And I'll turn the volume down on my phone, which is where I keep the video up in case we do have people pop in and give us some live stream chats. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to criticalblast.com, where pop culture gets blasted. We are speaking today with H.J. Ramsay, who is the author of Ever Alice, and we're going to talk about Lewis Carroll and Alice Little. And if you don't know who Alice Little is or didn't know that Alice had a last name, then this is going to be an informative little broadcast for you. I am R.J. Carter, a senior editor with criticalblast.com, author of The Destroyer Bully Pulpit and Continental Divide, and also the author of Alice's Journey Beyond the Moon, which was my first book. So I have a very vested interest in what Ms. Ramsay has to say tonight. Welcome to the show. So let's talk a little bit about your new book here. This is Ever Alice. And we tried to talk last week. We had some technical difficulties. This is a fiction book that continues the adventures of In Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass, right?
That is correct, yes.
So where does this pick up after all this? Is Alice still a little girl? Is she in college? Is it still the same set of characters? Well, walk us through a little bit of what we're seeing here.
About 15 years old, so it's flash forward a few years. And in that time, she has been so, obviously stricken by it continues to affect her, and she talks about it, much to the dismay of her parents and her sister. So that
we're starting to glitch out. You might want to drop that camera.
Can I turn the video off?
Yeah, go ahead and turn the camera off. We're getting a little bit of sound cut out. There we go.
Okay.
So she's 15 and she's still talking about her time that was spent in Wonderland, and the family's not happy about that. That's what I'm getting so far.
Yes, and so they want to get her to stop talking about Wonderland. So they start sending her to a bunch of doctors, psychologists, problem, and fix her, so to speak.
Well, madness was definitely one of the themes that Lewis Carroll touched on. The big quote from Wonderland, of course, is that we're all mad here, from the Cheshire Cat. I take it the doctors don't help much.
No, I mean.
So does she end up going to another version of Wonderland, or is it she stays in England?
She does stay in England with one doctor, but I thought, so the gist of the conflict, so to speak, is that she's not really engaged in her therapy. She's not taking her medicine, and she gets found out, and that she's still having these thoughts of Wonderland. So the doctor decides that there is this new doctor in Switzerland who's just doing these like radical new experiments and has new theories about where the disorders are, and that they're in the brain. And he's a real doctor. His name is Dr. Gottlieb Burckhardt, who practiced in Switzerland at that time.
All right, so this sounds like it's going to be some fairly not quite as lighthearted and nonsensical as the first books were, but this could be sort of terrifying for a 15-year-old girl to be facing this kind of treatment and these medical procedures.
In an asylum forever, and she wants to leave, and she's like a dangling carrot of, if you go and do this. Oh, are we glitching again?
Yeah, I'm cutting out on your sound. Am I cutting out sound on your end?
Are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
You are, but it's not as bad as last time. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, it just cuts out in mid-sentence, but then sometimes it picks right back up where you were. So I think there's just a delay somewhere between you and me.
Yeah. It's not as bad as last time, but yeah, it's still there.
No, it's not. So I'm assuming that there's going to be some sort of a resolution. This is not now Alice Little being presented here in the story, and you know, if you've done the research on Alice, and I know you have, you know that Alice was, of course, a real little girl to whom Lewis Carroll Charles Dodgson told this story to verbally when he took her and her two sisters out on a boating trip on the Isis River. And Alice loved the story so much she begged him to write it down, and then he ended up publishing it, and it was obviously a big hit that has stood the test of time. You're still focused on here Alice the Dream Child version, which would be the one who actually did go to Wonderland, did go through the Looking Glass. Does she have any of these mystical or fantastical kind of events happen to her while she's seeing these doctors, or has she lost that kind of connection?
No, it's starting to come back. So as an event where she feels like it's like she left the asylum for a moment and she's back home and she doesn't know if this is real or if it's not real. And she, you know, she has no idea. She's been through a lot, going through, you know, obviously she's just a young girl who really hasn't had much time to mature and is kind of stunted in that way. So when this occurs where she feels like she leaves the asylum suddenly, she doesn't know if it maybe she did, you know, and so she comes back home briefly and she has an encounter with the White Rabbit, and then kind of it's when he asks her to come back to Wonderland, and she wants to go home. That's kind of what her goal is. So she ends up leaving the White Rabbit and coming back to her room, and then poof, in a way, she ends up back in the asylum. And so that makes her really question a lot of what has occurred.
Asylums do tend to crop up in Alice sequels. I don't know how many of the Alice sequels you've seen, but one was a video game, which was definitely a lot darker than the.
Oh yeah, you know, I played that game. My brother played that.
Yeah, American McGee's Alice, and that one was definitely very very dark and very very focused on mental illness and madness. I'm trying to think. I thought there was another book that kind of got into it, but I might be thinking of one of the short stories in Ever Alice, not Ever Alice. That's your book, Fantastic Alice, which was an anthology series. But yeah, the madness and the mental illness. Again, Lewis Carroll Charles Dodgson. He had an uncle who was a curator at one of these asylums at the time. So he definitely had exposure over and lengthy exposure to people who were suffering these things, such as, you know, like dual personality disorders, even though they weren't diagnosed at the time as that. What kind of research did you dig into any of the real life encounters between Dodgson and Little, or was this more focused on digging into the books so that you could get the right voice to carry forward?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that one more time? You kind of cut out a little bit.
Sure. Did you dig into when you were preparing to write the book? Did you dig into any of the background of the real life Dodgson and Little relationship, or did you focus more on the fictional books themselves to get the voice and the narrative that you were working
I did. I did. I did dig into their background, and my goal was to write it in as close to Lewis Carroll's style as possible. And I initially, in my first draft, I did have Alice as Alice Liddell, and then I received a review that said that questioned that, and I had to agree with that this story of Alice in this Alice, the one that he told the story to. So that's kind of like what my goal was originally. The reason why I used Alice Liddell in the original version, I thought maybe just being clever, but I ended up taking it out, and I tried to really focus on Alice, the dream Alice, the one that he wrote about, not so much the real Alice. But I did look into the relationship, and I tried to also keep it as close to the time frame of that was possible that could match up to both when Gottlieb Burckhardt was practicing and the time frame that Alice Liddell would have been. But it's match up, precisely, but it's close enough.
Well, Alice is one of those flexible characters that you can start to interchange the Alice Little character and the Alice Dreamchild character. One of the series that was out that I really enjoyed was from Frank Bedore, and that was the Looking Glass Wars. In his, Alice was from Wonderland and had been expatriated to the, quote, real world to save her from assassins. She was the princess there. And she told her story to Charles Dodgson, who in turn turned it into a book. And that angered her because she thought he wasn't taking her seriously. She thought she could trust him, and he thought she was telling a fantastic tale. So many different ways you can interpret it. I know that Disney sort of blended the two books together into their animated version. And then Disney readapted their animated story into a live action story. I think the Alice in Wonderland movie that Tim Burton directed might be the first time that Disney took one of their classic animated stories and turned it into a live action version. And it was wildly different from what was done on the cartoon. And they've started doing that a lot, I think. And I think that's one of the things that your PR announcement said that you were studying and looking into was Disney films in their animated versions versus their live action versions now.
Right.
And I know when we were talking before, you just got to see Aladdin. So how did that measure up for you, versus animated versus live action?
Loved it. It was awesome. I like that. I do like that Disney is taking these originals, and the originals are real, and without them, you couldn't really have these remakes of Disney. But I like that they're taking the original and expanding on it, and there are certain things in Aladdin that I feel like makes more sense in the version that they recreated than in the cartoon. And I was, a preteen when Aladdin came out first time, and it was huge, and like everybody had the CD, and if you could sing. I mean, they're playing like it's a whole new world at every single dance at high school. So, I mean, it was a big deal. And so it was, just to see what they would remake is kind of interesting, but I think they did a great job.
They've been pretty consistent. I mean, they've had to deviate some. I mean, you're going to a movie, so there's some things you can't do that were so easy to do in a cartoon. But Cinderella was, wasn't a blockbuster, but it was a faithful, and it made them good money. Beauty and the Beast, I think, did better. The Lion King the Lion King just crossed the $1 billion mark after 3 weeks. So it's obviously making phenomenal box office. And it seems now that Disney has started to kind of go out of their way, not just to adapt now, but also to stir up controversy. Have you seen the Lion King version yet?
Stir up controversy in what way?
That would be specifically with their announcement of casting for The Little Mermaid. I think that was.
I haven't. That's.
Go ahead.
Oh no, you kind of cut out there. So the casting of The Little Mermaid.
Yeah, when they announced the casting of The Little Mermaid, I think it it definitely caused some internet drama there, with people wondering why they weren't casting a Caucasian redhead to play the role. And I think they definitely got people talking about it months and months before it's even going to hit the theaters. So they've got all this advanced chatter, and then people are going to go see it to see why it's so different and how it measures up.
Right.
And I forgot about one because I think it was largely forgettable in the first place. Dumbo did a live action, and I don't know if they had as much success with that one, because I don't recall hearing much about it. Maybe that's why they're trying to drum up more chatter.
Yeah, maybe so. I mean, I love Dumbo. Dumbo was probably one of my favorites as a kid. It's just I would love to see it. I'm a little hesitant because there's that whole scene, and even in the cartoon with him and his mom, and it's kind of sad even in the cartoon. And I heard it's like a tearjerker on the screen. So that's the reason why I haven't rushed to watch it, just because that's sad. But it was my favorite as a kid.
Yeah, that was a sad moment. It almost makes me wonder if they ever do live action Bambi, if they will be able to pull off the pivotal scene with Bambi's mother. But I think with the technology,
it's going to be the same thing. Like, no one is going to want to watch that.
Exactly, but I think with the technology they put into Lion King,
with the technology,
it's so realistic that it's almost easier to believe they went into the jungle and taught lions to talk than it was to believe that they did it all with computer. But if they can do that, then they can definitely do Bambi and the other animal-centric movies that they've done, cartoons that they've done.
Yeah. I've heard from other moms that have seen it that it feels very realistic, and that the hyenas are scarier, kind of. And but yeah, I would love to see it. Lion King's a classic. So is Bambi, and I'd probably go see Bambi even though I know what's going to happen. It's going to be super sad, but yeah, I'd see it too. Bambi is one of my favorites, and so would be The Fox and the Hound would also be equally a tearjerker.
Oh yes.
So
all the animated classics were designed to make us cry at some point.
Yeah.
All right. Well, returning to the book here for just a moment. Now, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, I think we got a delay here. We're stepping on each other, and I'm trying to make sure I leave enough blank space for you to respond and talk. I didn't get a review copy of the book yet. They're still sending that out for me to read. Has it been released yet? So I don't even know that much.
It is released tomorrow.
Oh, happy book day.
Thanks. I am ready. I am ready.
You've got everything set up for the tour and for all the signings? You know what?
yeah, we have it all set up. I'm excited to see what happens this next step. It's been a long road when I decided to do this, and I'm just kind of ready to see what after the release was going to happen next.
Do you have plans to continue on with it, or do you want to jump on to some other story now? Did you catch that last part?
Are you
I've
there?
lost you.
No, yeah, I didn't catch it. What did you say?
I'm here.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you have plans for another story? Is it going to follow on from here, or do you want to jump on to somewhere else, or do you just want to kind of enjoy this moment first before thinking about the next book?
I've been writing for almost 20 years, so I have a lot of novels that I finished and walked away from, and then started the next one. So I'm kind of revisiting all these old novels, and Ever Alice was one of these novels. I wrote it about 10 years ago, and I had an agent at the time, and it was going on rounds, and it just never happened. And I started my MFA program, and I kind of abandoned it for the next novel. So now I'm just kind of going back through my old work and seeing things that I enjoyed, and if I can revamp them. It's been so long. 10 years for Ever Alice. Some that are even older, and that I think after 10 years, you definitely have a new eye going into it. So that's kind of like what my plans are now, is to kind of look at some of my old work and see what I can do with it, because I loved them. It didn't go anywhere at the time. So.
Well, I think 10 years for the first novel is probably par for the course. I know that's what it took me, just in the research and the shopping around and the rewrites. But after that, hopefully it gets a little bit faster and a little bit easier. And we will definitely be looking for more output from you. We want to remind all our readers to go hit up Amazon and go hit up your local bookstores to ask for Ever Alice by H.J. Ramsay. And we look forward to hearing your opinions on it. Ms. Ramsay, thank you for joining us tonight. We appreciate your time, and we will look forward to reading this book ourselves and getting a review out there for you.
I appreciate it.
Have a good evening.
All right, thank you so much. You too.